My name is Christopher, and I'm 39, a dedicated homemaker and mother to my spirited 5-year-old daughter. My husband, Daniel, is my unwavering partner through this beautiful, chaotic journey of family life. Despite the joy of our bustling household, a quiet ache of estrangement remains from my own siblings. I stand between an older brother and a younger one, but over time, the bond we once shared has faded into a distant memory. Growing up, the rift was obvious. My brothers, always inseparable, left me behind because I was a girl. Even now, though the years have passed, their camaraderie endures, almost untouched by time. Despite the age gap, they remain close, so much so that they even chose to live together as adults. Since I got married a decade ago, the distance between us has only grown, leaving me wondering about their lives from afar. The loneliness that has often accompanied me led to a decision to limit my family to just 2 children, a choice born from the sting of childhood exclusion. However, life has its own plans. Against the odds, our daughter's arrival brought a warmth that filled the emptiness I once felt. Now, my world revolves around Daniel and our daughter, leaving little room for thoughts of my brothers. Even the news of my older brother's engagement barely stirred my emotions. As the day of his introduction to Julia approached, though, our family home buzzed with excitement. My parents, who had been concerned about my brother's bachelorhood, were busy with preparations, while my younger brother lamented his own single status. When my brother arrived with Julia, the air seemed to hum with celebration, erasing any shadows of the past. I stood off to the side, detached as though I were observing a distant event that had no connection to me. "All the best, Steve and Julia," I said, though my words felt empty as I mechanically prepared coffee. Julia walked into the kitchen, offering her help. I politely declined, urging her to enjoy the gathering as our guest, but there was something about her, her smirk, her quiet judgment, that left me unsettled. "Time flies, doesn't it?" she said, her words dripping with something I couldn't quite place. "You used to be so small, and now you're the lady of the house." The comment stung, leaving me speechless. I could only nod, masking my discomfort before retreating to the living room. Her words lingered in my mind, but I resolved not to let her affect me. Still, the unease stayed, like a shadow hanging over my relationship with my brother and his new fiancée. A month later, my mother invited us to a family reunion, and Daniel, our daughter, and I returned to my childhood home. The warm welcome from my family, especially towards Daniel and our daughter, offered a brief moment of peace. As I refilled coffee cups in the kitchen, Julia once again appeared, her presence sending a chill down my spine. "Christopher," she began, her tone thick with unspoken intent, "I don't want to see you at any more family gatherings. As a wife, you should be attending your husband's family events instead." She spat, each word dripping with disdain. Anger surged within me, but I bit my tongue. "Don't worry, I don't have much to do with this house. I was only called here by my mother," I replied coolly. "Then don't come again, even if my mother-in-law invites you," she shot back. I didn't know what Julia's issue was with me, but I wasn't about to waste energy on her. After all, I had spent much of my life being made to feel like an outsider by my own brothers. I had my small family now, and that was enough. Julia's behavior didn't concern me, unless it made my brother unhappy. "If you hate me, don't talk to me," I shot back before she stormed off. Since my brother's marriage, my mother had urged me to attend family gatherings, trying to mend old wounds, but after that interaction with Julia, I had made up my mind to keep my distance. If she didn't make my brother unhappy, what did it matter how she treated me? My brother's late-in-life marriage was supposed to be a happy occasion, and I didn't want to dampen his joy. We didn't interact much, and I convinced myself I could endure these occasional gatherings. I talked with Daniel about my decision. "Do you really want to be part of a family where you're treated like this?" he asked, concern etching his face. "It's fine, I wasn't close with my brother, but I still want him to be happy. If I'm the one who has to bear it, so be it," I answered, my voice low. Daniel's support felt reassuring, but I couldn't escape the bitterness that lingered in my heart. Just then, an unfamiliar number flashed on my phone. It was Julia. "Oh, Christopher, how have you been?" Her voice was unervingly chipper. "When I said I wanted to be friends with you, Steve gave me your number," she said, cutting straight to the point. "Is that so?" I replied, trying to sound indifferent. "Do you still talk to Steve?" she asked, her tone sharpened with an edge. "No, I don't," I stammered, now feeling the strain of the conversation. Are you lying? Her voice tightened with irritation. No one believes me when I badmouth you. It's so annoying. Confused and a little rattled, I tried to regain my composure. Did I do something to you, Julia? Her response was chilling. It's worse that you don't realize it. Anyway, stay out of this. If you tell anyone what I said, I'll send some people I know to your house. Understand? Fear gripped me as I ended the call abruptly. My hands shook, my mind racing. Should I tell my brother? Should I talk to my parents? I wasn't sure what to do. Daniel, sensing my distress, placed a hand on my shoulder. You look pale. What happened? I told him about the conversation, each word making his anger rise. Block her number. We're telling your parents and your brother. No way should he marry someone like that. I hesitated, but maybe she's good in front of Steve. Maybe I just need to stay out of it. Do you think that's it? She threatened you. She's not a good person, Christopher. If your brother knew. I sighed, feeling torn, but why should I be the one to intervene? I've kept my distance for so long. If our small family unit is enough, why can't I leave it at that? Daniel's calmness cracked slightly. You've been carrying a lot of hurt for a long time, haven't you? But this is about more than just your brother. You need to talk to them. This isn't just about you anymore. I realized then that Daniel was right. I had to confront my past, but before I could act, I received a call from my mother. My brothers had been in a serious accident while on a trip, and both were in critical condition. Panic gripped me as I rushed to the hospital. Julia had minor injuries, but my brothers were fighting for their lives. By the time I arrived, surgery had concluded. Miraculously, they had both survived but were still in critical care, allowing only a brief visitation. Julia, still in the hospital, kept her distance, and I avoided her as much as possible. My mother, however, was concerned for Julia, offering her the comfort of our home. Julia, you don't need to worry about anything. Stay with us for now, my mother said, as the family gathered around in the sterile hospital room. I could only watch, silent, unsure of what the future held for all of us. The days at the hospital stretched on, each visit blending into the next. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the soft murmur of nurses' footsteps became familiar. Despite my brother's immobility, their faces would brighten at the sight of me, offering gentle smiles that, though faint, brought a sense of calm to my heart. It was a silent reassurance that, despite everything, we were still connected. Still, something about the hospital visits felt incomplete, as though I was missing a larger piece of the puzzle of my family's emotions, our unspoken words, and the tension that seemed to hang in the air. 2 months into their hospitalization, I was walking alone toward their room when I overheard the sound of their voices drifting down the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and curiosity made me stop. If something were to happen to me, my older brother's voice carried out, steady yet heavy with responsibility. I've made sure the insurance money would go to Christopher. If Catherine is happy, then I'm content. The sincerity in his words stung, and I couldn't help but pause. Guilt settled in my chest like a cold weight. His words were meant for me, simple, direct, but they only left me more confused, unsure of my place in all this. But their conversation shifted. Truly, I feel bad for Julia, but perhaps it was for the best that we didn't invite Christopher. Julia seems uncomfortable around her. If it weren't for that, we would have invited the whole family, my younger brother added, his voice carrying an undertone of regret. I froze in the hallway, the words ringing in my ears. Julia, my brothers had always been inseparable, two halves of the same whole, and yet, in that moment, I realized that I had always been an outsider, a shadow in the background of their closeness, always on the periphery, never really a part of their shared world. That kid, when she was small, she used to imitate me and got injured. I'm a man, after all, and I've done dangerous things, but I can't let Christopher get hurt again. Plus, our sister, she's so serious all the time. It's hard to depend on someone who tries so hard. My older brother's voice softened with concern. I felt a stab in my chest. Had they really seen me as such? Had my efforts to be there, to be strong for them, truly gone unnoticed? My mind raced, and I clutched the doorframe for support as my mother's voice broke through the fog of my thoughts. You thought that much about Christopher? She asked, her voice soft with disbelief. For a brief moment, I let my head hang. They cared. In the past, I had assumed they were indifferent, even resentful of me, but in their own way, they had always tried to protect me. The guilt inside me was now replaced with a flicker of understanding, a realization that I had never fully grasped their depth of care. We begged Daniel to take care of Christopher, do you remember? My mother added, her voice filled with warmth. I could hear laughter in the room. Seems like he's keeping his promise, taking good care of her. I stood there, rooted to the spot, my heart swelling with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. I never saw it, I never truly understood. But the moment passed quickly. I wiped my eyes, unable to join in the conversation, my emotions a tangled mess of relief and regret. I had always been so focused on my own hurt that I had failed to see the love they were offering. Determined to make sense of everything, I left the hospital and found myself walking toward Julia's house. My feet carried me there without thought, almost as if I was being pulled by something larger than myself. When I rang the doorbell, Julia answered, her face already twisted in disdain. Could you please visit my brother in the hospital? I asked, my voice steady, but my hands trembling. I heard you haven't been to see him since the accident. Julia's expression darkened, and she didn't even try to hide her contempt. You think I'm going to marry a man in that state? She snapped. I told you everything already. I'm going to break off the engagement once this is all over, and frankly, I'm glad we didn't marry. Her words hit like a slap. Julia, didn't you get engaged to my brother because you love him? I asked, the question hanging in the air between us. She laughed, a cold, hollow sound. Don't be stupid, I'm in insurance sales. I approached him because he had a high insurance policy. His salary was a bonus too, though it turned out to be a misunderstanding. He put you down as his beneficiary. Usually, when you get engaged, you change that to your spouse, but he didn't, so I convinced him that once we were married, he'd change it to my name, but I don't need a man with those kinds of injuries. I stood there, stunned. So, you were keeping me away so my brother and I wouldn't meet? She shrugged, uncaring. Yes, if he cared so much for his sister, I figured it would be a nuisance. But don't worry, I won't say anything else. The accident killed any love I had for him, and the fact that I got injured too is the worst part. The accident is partly your brother's fault, so he should compensate me for my emotional damage. My anger flared, but I forced myself to stay calm. If you consult a lawyer, you'll find that your demands are pointless, I said, my voice steady. You don't know that, she replied with a scoff. I do, I said, but more importantly, I paused, letting the words linger. I've been recording this conversation. What do you think will happen if I report this to the police? The change in her demeanor was immediate. Her defiance crumbled, replaced with fear and anger. What are you thinking? Recording people's conversations without permission? That's wiretapping. That's a crime, she yelled. Before I could respond, Julia's mother stormed into the room, fury written across her face. How dare you record her without permission? Hand over your phone. I stood my ground, my voice calm but firm. I'm glad you've decided to break off the engagement. Frankly, I wouldn't want someone like you around my brother. Without another word, I turned and left, my heart racing. I headed straight back to the hospital, where my brothers were recuperating. The moment I entered their room, they looked at me with surprise, their eyes full of questions. I have something to show you, I said, my voice trembling with the weight of what I was about to reveal. I played the recording of my conversation with Julia, and both of my brothers listened in stunned silence. As the full extent of her manipulation sank in, their faces turned pale. I also revealed that I had secretly recorded our earlier conversation, giving them the opportunity to hear her true intentions firsthand. My older brother's rage was palpable. Despite his injuries, he attempted to rise from his bed in fury. I quickly stepped forward to restrain him. Stop it, I said softly but firmly. I didn't want you to hear this to make you angry. I just want you to understand. I don't want you marrying someone like her. My younger brother spoke next, his voice gentle but full of sincerity. I can't forgive her either. But sis, why did you go to such lengths for us? I hesitated, then confessed that I had overheard their conversation with Mom. The weight of their unspoken words had pushed me to take action. I apologized for eavesdropping, but it was a risk I had to take. To my surprise, both of my brothers nodded, their faces softening with understanding. We're sorry, my older brother said, his voice full of remorse. We didn't know how to reach out to you after what happened when we were kids, but we've always cared about you. Tears welled in my eyes as the walls that had separated us seemed to crumble. Thank you, I whispered. I'm an adult now. I don't just need to be protected, I can protect you too. Over the next few days, my brothers made a full recovery. and my older brother officially ended his engagement with Julia. Refusing to bow to her demands, he hired a lawyer to deal with her claims, but nothing came of it. Julia, with her manipulative behavior exposed, found herself isolated from the people who once supported her.